Hey everyone, welcome to GVN Interviews. My name is Mike Vaughn, and I am really excited because I have a very special guest today. We have Ariel Vida today. I am really excited because you have worked on some of my favorite films in the last couple years, like The Endless, She Dies Tomorrow. Oh man, She Dies Tomorrow was so good. And it's great because those movies are also visually like stunning and just really amazing to look at. So that kind of leads me into my first question, which is for those not in the showbiz world, what would you say your job is as a production designer?
That's a great question. Um, so I suppose on these independent films, the main difference is wow, see, I'm already here's my first one. I'll backpedal that. I was like, okay, how do I um okay, sorry. Thank you. So on these independent films especially, it becomes even more concentrated than sometimes a broader scope art department. But the production designer overall is the department head of art department, working alongside the cinematographer and the director. I feel like everyone, knows that triangle of that, creating that vision. But on all of these films you mentioned, actually, I've been very fortunate to be working with some of the most ridiculously talented other people in the art department. My art director, Katie Simon, and graphic designer, Kim Behrens. And a lot of times on these, actually, all these ones you've listed, um, that's about it. We'll have day players and set dressers, and it's just on these really lovely intimate shoots, like Something in the Dirt with Rustic, uh, where everyone's just wearing a lot more hats than I've had the honor on some recent films to work with incredible props masters, and the main responsibility, of course, is months, as much prep as possible, to hone in on the director's vision ahead of time, and then just work with the rest of the team, specifically cinematographer, but also costumes, VFX, anyone who's on board in prep, to really just kind of dial in what we're that we're all on the same page, and how do we bring it to life. And like you said, on some of these films, usually it's like limited resources. What are the smart ways? And these collaborators like Justin and Aaron and Amy are also amazing in terms of being like, okay, we have this much time and money, and this is what we're going for, and being so gracious and open to, like, is there a way that's not on the page or not at this location that might achieve, and but then they explain what they're going for, and it's a wonderful collaboration process to be like, okay, for $4, how can we best do that?
I'm kind of curious, like, to hear what the pre-production process with crafting specifically Something in the Dirt was like,
Mhm.
as far as just like the look. I think it has such a unsettling feeling, even though the setting is very mundane. So I think it's such a cool way to balance those two things.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess piggybacking off the last thing, and I said, oh, we don't normally on the smaller ones have the full, spread of, the steps of going through, a ton of, different concept art and storyboards and all of that. But again, I'm actually super lucky that we still do that in just these very concentrated positions. And so Katie Simon, like my right hand, right hand woman, who's my art director, also in terms of something like, all of the Rustic films, is able to, since we're basically just on the same page already, like concept art, instead of having to like outsource, for set design or for those elements. We got the heads up for Something in the Dirt. I think I was formally sent the script 3 weeks before we started shooting.
Wow.
And I'd been asking Dave and the guys about it. I definitely knew something was happening, and they said, "Oh, I think there'll be a few props. If you could grab a few props, like we're not gonna have, many people on set for COVID safety, but we'll give you the script." And then when they were like, "We're gonna go on October 1st or 2nd. Here's the script," and I read it, and it was just full, obviously, like sort of, very, bespoke props, and old tablets and crystal ashtrays, and I was like, this is a this is a lot. But I think that that's part of the process of having worked with them so often, is that so much of that shorthand was already there though, of, right away then. So Katie and I immediately began, I, break down the script. I start separating out like, okay, well, which of these things do need to be start making from scratch tomorrow and iterating on those. And yeah, I think that if it was a complete outsourced, new director team where you weren't exactly sure as much what you were doing, from the Endless and Synchronic, right away we're doing research on, okay, this ashtray is going to have, a lot of elements of this symbol that's going to be on the wall. So we need to, start iterating on that. I was doing research on, sacred geometry, and so is my graphic designer, and it's peak COVID time. So we're just emailing things back and forth, looping Justin and Aaron in. The second we're, as we're coalescing on a main symbol we like, Katie has already been with clay iterating on different versions of how the ashtray could be formed in the first place. And knowing the boys, they're kind of this dusty naturalism, I think is what they call it, this beautiful palette that they have. It was this kind of like a what do you call it, like a magician's like trick bag of like, our the things we've used for the time warped props and Synchronic. It's like, oh, we'll probably make, these strange elements, these tablets and these skulls. The way the skull is warped isn't, an entirely different train of thought to be in than like the time warped Synchronic elements. There's very loud chickens outside. I hope that's not coming through. the chickens of West Michigan. So I think a lot of that is like, we knew that kind of like look and texture. We knew we weren't going for, these, either like really, glossy sci-fi, like, overly polished, futuristic looking things. We knew what their, vision was for starters, if that's a very roundabout way of saying that. I think also I think they knew in writing the script and handing it to us, like what we would immediately understand. And for instance, it being written in both of their apartments. That's, it's, incredibly smart of them, in knowing what we were going to be doing over the pandemic, but also even on the bigger budgets and more time, you end up being on shoots where they're pulling locations that they think are a slight discount, but it actually is, a huge, time or resource drain to try to turn into something it's not, and it's not my place to tell a producer like, oh, we're spending a lot of manpower and a lot of money and a lot of this to turn this slightly different when this, but they wrote for their apartments, just like they wrote, just like Justin wrote the Endless for the camp that they were based in for Resolution. So we weren't worrying about, okay, well, when can we go in and do a location scout and do, measurements for this? Like, we know what their apartments look like and we've shot there before. So right away, these elements, what we'd be drawing upon of, Justin was writing into the script, parts of the ceiling like leaking. So then right away, as we're, expanding off of that, of, okay, what is the rest of the texture on the wall going to be? How is the door frame and the writing and the math in the closet and creating the closet door? Like I had to build the closet door from scratch to be like, they were like, we want it to look like an outside door, but it's like a 19 inches wide. Again, no time or money for a carpenter, so I'm just learning how to build a door. Wow. But that prep process, was able to be a very streamlined 3 weeks because Katie and I just switched into, rustic Justin and Aaron brain, and Kim obviously in making like the Geometry of Magnetism book. It's like she also designed the Arcadian Brewery like logo, like that language, that little like, I guess, telepathic link of, giving 3 options, but knowing that, one of them will probably be close and, getting great notes from Justin and Aaron. And so that was it was a pretty quick process for Something in the Dirt, much more than something like the Endless. But in the Endless, that was me learning, their visual language for the first time. And now I hope, and I want to continue, to dial that in even more every time. But I feel like I could like hit the ground running and go to, getting old radios to the prop house and be like, they're gonna like that, they're not gonna like that. I know what Aaron wants in front of his lens. I know what Justin wants out of his script, and
that's great. That kind of, I think it sort of even answers what I was going to say about how you and Justin and Aaron have worked on. This is the 3rd project, is that right?
Yes, so the third with them as directors, and then also they were producers on Shoot Eyes Tomorrow.
Okay.
And it just always seems, and then some like different, like some commercials and music videos and stuff, but then
Oh,
you're
nice.
working with other people's visions, not just in the script.
Yeah. But it must be really nice when you can work with the same directors, as you say, the same art director, and it's just easier to just like sync up. And as you say, when you're, looking for props, you're like, okay, I know
Mhm.
that's what the guys are gonna like. That fits their aesthetic. So that's probably why, you part of one of the reasons why you love working with them is just like you really know their kind of style, and it probably makes your job so much easier.
No, you're totally right, and that's why, as I think I was mentioning earlier, in directing more and choosing which projects I still want to design, and I keep telling people at festivals, and always giving the caveat, because I don't want anyone to think that I wouldn't want to do their next ones, because like you said, as it's extremely difficult in its own indie film ways, but I've done over, like, yeah, it's like 203 projects at this point, and
Wow.
I love so many of these directors so much, but it's just like Justin and Aaron, and you mentioned She Dies Tomorrow, Amy, like, these short, uh, short prep times, independent budgets. They're I can hear the dogs outside. The clarity of their not just vision, but like I said, the collaboration, the process of sitting down. You can hear that dog, right?
A little bit. It's not too bad. I was gonna say.
Sorry. But anyway, yeah, so it's a lot of fun that you're not being yeah, for lack of a better term, like set up to fail, of they're going to be throwing out things that they know that Katie and Kim and I can do. And also there's a mutual trust of, if I'm like, hey, this is, if we spend this amount of time, or money, or flipping the set here, this would have to suffer, or this would have to change, and I again, coming from a kind of uh, jack of all trades, producing and directing my own things, knowing how budget works, I'm able to say things like, hey, we would need this truck to pick this up. So, and you'd have so many other teams who would just send you to do it anyway. They'd be like, I can't, yeah, I can't compartmentalize, the triage you're telling me, so please just do it all, and everything will suffer slightly. And so, yeah, it's really lovely to be, just, again, we're always on the same page of, here's the script, here's the heart of the characters and the story, how do we do this best with the resources we have. And they're always also the most grateful. It's not just me. I know it's a lot of production designers I talk to. Like, we just you stay up, 30 hours in a row, and you just really want like a thank you. And it's kind of amazing how many times just like you come to set, and a client on a big commercial just shoots it, not a thank you, not in anything. You get your paycheck eventually, but there's that wanting to be part of putting something beautiful on screen. And Justin and Aaron and Dave are all the most just overt and frequent of their appreciation, and they're checking in on
Nice.
the team, which yeah, is just like on synchronic. Just remember, they went out of their way to say, hey, we don't normally have a set dressing team that we don't meet. We always see the people getting everything together right before the shot, and we're flipping sets. Our amazing New Orleans team is like flipping sets overnight, and Justin and Aaron went out of their way to say, hey, can you relay our thanks to these people? We know you have a team that we've never been met, and they're working, they're like, we might not ever meet them. They're working all night for us. So can you please, just make sure that they know how grateful we are. And that's extremely rare to get from a director.
Yeah,
And yeah.
that's pretty amazing. So it's interesting because I kind of had to do a little bit of homework about what actually a production designer does, and it's interesting because I like, I guess it was earlier this year, I interviewed someone that does like hair and makeup, and I think that when you're doing your job extremely well, you don't necessarily notice it. Would you say that's the kind of the case with like a good production designer? Like, if you're on point, it should just look like Justin and Aaron came there already, prepped and just filmed it.
Well, what's interesting, I made a weird noise right there. What I think, and that's one of the challenges with art department is, depending, I feel like that definition of production designer, why someone might want to get into production design, which was a bit of an accident for me starting as a director and just doing my own sets, is obviously if you have something like the Lord of the Rings, you're truly designing, you're truly designing a world and a history and different cultures, and there's that element of like pure creation, pure design, and also enough money to make it possible. And then you have more contemporary films where, like you said, it might be a little more, invisible, when things aren't trying to, if you have something even like, The Father, where you're trying to have the apartment shifting, and obviously it's, it's subtle but extremely crucial to the plot as things are changing. So I feel like the script, various scripts, whether you're doing, Wes Anderson, or Christopher Nolan, do you want it? Is it supposed to, the locations and the props really just, fall into that complete naturalism? And the challenge on these independent films is sometimes what truly looks like, you said, like you didn't do anything at all. But if it's like your friend's, garage that hasn't been touched in 30 years, and it's, you're like, there's like stray cats you're guiding out and everything, then like, oh yeah, a week of work could look like, absolutely nothing. And that's the point. But I think that a lot of designers, it's like, being able to make some sort of, a sci-fi, world or something is where you're able to, kind of, I guess, flex a little bit in those ways. And it's a relief when you don't have much time and money, when you're literally like, hey, this is the coffee shop, we have to Greek some Pepsi logos, but otherwise you're fine. But I think the funniest ones are, when you have to spend like an inordinate amount of time, all your favors. I'll be calling in my sister from San Diego, and at the end of the day they're like, oh, it's an empty garage, like it was supposed to be. And you're like, the things we've seen to make this look like a totally empty garage.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible, because you don't really, it's like you don't really think about these things. I mean, I think it was incredible that you said like you spent some of your time learning how to make a door. I mean, you don't like think that's like, I mean, that must be the most interesting and maybe frustrating thing, is like you never know kind of what you're going into. That must be kind of like it.
Well, and it depends, because it's always, I mean, you always wish you had more time, always wish you had more, I guess anyone would say time and money, but for me, it really would be time. Because even something like The Endless, I again, I don't think they or Dave would mind me being like, we had like two nickels, to try to make a budget. But I was able to be, going to scrolling Craigslist for, like free VHS tape lots, and just going to, literally once I had to go like down a hill, like through some trees, like sketchy. They're like, oh, I have a shed with a bunch of tapes, and I was like, I'm totally getting murdered. But having the time though is, I think, as an artist of any type, it's a thrill to be, for instance, at Crystal Ashtray. Katie had been, perfecting all these great modeling and casting techniques for different props in synchronic, and how we were going to have untime warped ones, and the ones that were more stretched, but then having to do this kind of crystalline, ideally completely see-through item was new. And so there was the element of the it's fun to go to the Reynolds materials, go to the experts and talk to them about well, how would you do this? But then you find out, oh, you're supposed to have like a big vacuum chamber, and you need to have this and this, and we don't have the time or money or people to do it. So in that way, it's like can be that stress when you're like, oh, I want to learn this properly, or I want the tools to do this. I watch like Adam Savage's workshop videos, and I'm like, I want that lathe, like I want to be able to do that. But realistically on these indie shoots, you don't. So you're trying to figure out like the right way to do things, or Kim is the most brilliant like history buff, so she'll be like, this is how these relics they're finding would actually look. But then having to make those, compromises, whether it's, with time or resources on a huge shoot, you would find the very best, uh, props maker, machinists, to be making these things with their $1 million equipment that we don't have. But in terms of, I get bored easily. I don't think I would do well with like a job that was the same thing every single day.
Yeah.
And the fact that every different shoot is forcing you to learn these different things, and you wind up with like the strangest backlog of of what you've had to research for that. Like one of my very first jobs, just volunteering on an AFI shoot when I first moved to LA, I had to carve bricks out of foam, and I'd never done anything like that before. I was just trying to be helpful in any way, and I was like, of course I've done that a million times. Of course, I'll carve you your World War II jail cell. And I was studying bricks so hard, like brick walls, to as I was like carving it, just so that I think it was like well over a year until I could like just drive past a brick building and not like be just like hyper fixating on like that, like real bricks, being like, those real bricks don't even quite look. I'm like tapping them, being like, well, those are real, but they look kind of fake. And it's just like, you just get these things, and like the stop signs in the 20s, and it's, and for me, maybe not for everybody, it is kind of fun to just have this like just trivia, like, pile that you've had to be like, New Orleans throughout the years for Synchronic. I could like probably rattle off all these New Orleans, facts I needed, or I wanted to know. But then if someone was like, oh, you know a lot about history in any other city? And I'd be like, not so much.
Like, that's so incredible. And it's so impressive, like just how y'all can just take like a modest budget and make a great looking film. Like these films look, I think, better than a lot of like these multi-million dollar movies,
Thank you. And yeah, I think the guys were saying in one of their recent, Q&As about, when you're not necessarily having anyone else that whole cooks in the kitchen, coming in and being like, well, here's the place for shooting, regardless of if it, doesn't look right. And yeah, I've definitely had to do things where I feel like the result isn't what I would like it to be, or it looks, cheaper in some way, you can see the seams more because of what you were kind of just thrown into, and the team not caring, to hear their, not just production design, like cinematographers, you would have like the light isn't right here, but someone not caring, or sound being like, this is by an airport, or something. And I think they're able, again, with that, that clarity of vision and the openness to the team ahead of time as the project is sculpted, that it's a huge honor then to yeah, be able to look at something and hear that kind of response and feel the same way that they look, they research as long as they're, or they're rehearsing to the same extent, as they're, having us like research. So everything, in the moment when something can go wrong, it's like, okay, well, we have this shorthand, we know what we're making, and it's not, 200 people like running around blaming each other. It's just this core team of people being like, okay, how do we fix this? What do we do right now? And yeah, I'm grateful that they turn out how they do, because it's an honor.
Yeah, that's great. And I know you were mentioning you direct like short films and stuff, but you actually worked on your first feature film, right? And
yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. I was just gonna say that I got a chance to check it out, and I loved it. I think it just gave me a really like wonderfully weird, upsetting kind of feeling, but not in like a kind of like an overt way. In a way, it kind of gave me sort of like David Lynch, which I love. So but yeah, tell us more about that. Yeah, but no, it's great. I would love to hear more about you making that, and when fans can actually see that movie.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's I've been working on, I think technically I was even talking about it with the band while shooting The Endless. So just speaking here about something in the dirt, it's just funny the amount of all the things I've designed that have interwoven in the process of getting that film off the ground. But yes, Vide Noir, that's my first feature as a director, which is this huge, ridiculously unfathomable honor to finally. That, like I said, that was the goal all along, and production design has been a happy accident. And so Vide Noir is with a band called Lord Huron, and it's their third album. Before it came out, Vide Noir, we were working on the lead singer Ben Schneider wrote the script. Actually, it was 2 albums in. I had been working on their music videos, and they always had these enormously rich, beautiful stories and worlds and characters appearing in these different videos, and in the songs, in the jacket, in the vinyl notes. And I, going into the third album, was like, there's this rich world that we're just getting like the littlest taste of in these videos, and I would love to do something longer, if possible. If we could do a short film or something for the third album, I'd kind of tried to go all out on a music video called The World Ender for their second album, Strange Trails. And we shot for 12 days for one music video, and everyone was like, what are you doing? And I was really happy with how it turned out. And a lot of the same team. So Katie, who's the art director in all these Rustic films, was my production designer on that. So yeah, we had definitely a short film's worth of movie for this music video. And I was like, what we should probably, like, let's try to go even bigger on this. And what started being discussed as a short film quickly, as Ben laid out the story, I was like, this is a feature. Like, this is a feature's worth of events and characters, and more. And I just kind of begged. I knew it was really ambitious. Like, this wasn't some sort of some studio or label being like, do this, here's your budget. This was me just being like, I'll figure it out. Like, if you can give me the shot. Like, I love this world, I love these characters. Let's just start diving in. So about as scrappy of the when you're shooting here and there as people's availabilities allow, just bagging locations, me going to like jazz clubs and docks, just being like, please, just like an hour, trying to get in there, because this world, they tell you, obviously, if you're doing an indie or your first indie film, I think they say like a location you own, natural daylight, all of these things. And just since we've been talking for so long now about indie films, the whole process, I was like, I know that this isn't what an indie film is supposed to be, a period film, all at night in a big city with a bunch of extras. It's like the opposite of a pandemic capsule film. It was just like, if you have no money, you should definitely try to do like a 60s red neon drenched bunker party, with hallucinogenic drugs. Like, that's totally what you're supposed to do on a shoestring. But yeah, it was we'd really gotten pretty far, almost completed, when the pandemic happened. So that really slowed it down. And it actually, just as of, I don't know when this interview drops, but November 8th, which at the time of recording is yesterday, it just came out, which is super surreal to say. I'm here with my family in, like I said, rural Michigan. So you're the first not my parents' person that I'm talking to since it came out about it.
Wow.
And yeah, so it's still weird after so long, and trying to keep things under wraps. There's lots of fun Easter eggs and moments for the fans that I didn't want to just be like, well, this is taking so long because of the pandemic, like I'm just gonna tease all these things ahead of time. Like, I wanted it to be this surprise of what characters from what albums are coming back, what places are we going to. So to be sitting on it for so long, and now finally it's on all the different VOD platforms right now, Google Play, Amazon, iTunes, Apple TV, for renting or buying. And eventually we'll surely put together as many goodies as possible for a Blu-ray, because just like that music video I mentioned, we certainly had a lot that didn't make the cut. But I'm really thrilled to hear that you like that, because yeah, that was definitely the process.
No, it's great. It was one of those, like, I was just in that right mood. It was at night. I put it on. It's just like, again, it's just, I love how just it is so visually striking, and that it's not surprising when somebody that does a lot of stuff with production design. I believe you've done like art direction in film as well.
Yeah. So I mean, starting, I worked with like Ryan Spindell, who's a great director. Like various,
Oh
yeah. In the
yeah.
very beginning, I was doing a lot more art directing, and then got lucky to be bumped up to production design. Like within a couple of years, which is like I said, just very lucky. And yeah, but that process of even Katie, who when I design, she art directs, but she's a brilliant designer, and I've been trying to direct. So now it's Vide Noir was the first, of many, hopefully, the process now of me directing and her being the designer. And like I said before, having that kind of second, you know, uh, little telepathic, like we know what we need,
Right.
and yeah, I think that the accidental benefit to designing nonstop when I moved to LA to direct is when I tell people I'm doing ridiculously ambitious things that everyone knows you shouldn't be doing as an independent filmmaker. They're like, well, I guess you're the designer who also does something with two pennies. So like, if anyone's gonna be that mad to do it, it's probably gonna be me.
Yeah, well, again, it's great. I will make sure to link where people can find it, and I highly recommend it. I think it's so good. Even somebody that's not necessarily familiar with the band, although I'm trying to rectify that now, like going back and listening to some of their previous stuff. I enjoyed it. I think that it was, again, well made, beautiful. Like just right away, I think it hooks you with the visuals, but then there's a really nice pulpy kind of mystery that really lures you in. And I was like, okay, I'm invested in this world and I want to know more.
I'm thrilled. You're, like I said, the first person outside of I've been ecstatic to see a lot of the fans picking up on different Easter eggs and characters, but that was always what the band, and specifically Ben, the screenwriter and singer, and Miguel wanted to make something that anyone would also be able to connect with. Thank you for having me. This is really, I haven't gotten to do something like this yet, and it's
All right.
thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.